Okay, so we actually had a report from people on our supporter program this week saying, whoa, why isn't anybody talking about this? And it turns out that RDNA 4, the latest line of GPUs from AMD, it seems to be having problems with Unreal Engine 4 games, or more specifically, Unreal Engine 4 games that are using ray tracing features. And this was something we could check out quite quickly, right, Alex? And indeed, you have. So there was the topic on Reddit is basically saying ray tracing is broken on RX 9070, 9070 XT in UE4 games, and nobody's talking about it. Major freezes with DX12 plus RT on RDNA 4. So you have looked into it. Is there an issue?
Yes, there is. So the user pointed it out in Returnal, Senua's Sacrifice, Sackboy, as well as they probably looked in a couple other titles. And of the three I tested, all those three, I couldn't get it to happen in Returnal. And I think that's because it was the level I was on. I was only on the initial biome, and I think the reason why it didn't happen is because the shader compilation did not occur. A specific explicit one. I'll talk about this in a second when I get to Senua's Sacrifice. But I couldn't get it to happen in Returnal. I sent Oliver some footage here. I played the game at like 4K TAA, just running through the biome, shooting up the boss, etc. Nothing was happening. Just the usual like split-second hitches that you get when doors open and stuff. That's the game on all platforms. But then I loaded up Senua's Sacrifice, and it was immediately apparent that something was wrong. So when I covered this game, when it got its DX12 RT patch back in the day, it didn't have like a good explicit shader compilation, pre-compilation step at all. And I complained that, what's the point of this update if it introduces shader compilation stutter? I thought it was just so stupid, right? And here, when you play through the game on an RX 9070 XT, as I'm showing, don't look at the overall frame rate. I'm playing at high settings like TAA 4K, as a baseline. I was doing that for all games. So it's like low frame rate. But you'll see the massive 0 FPS line when the game just stops moving. And it happens continuously as you progress through the game's first area. And I was thinking like, hey, I've played this before, and I remember there being stutters here, but they're not being this long. I went back to my original footage that we did when we covered this probably on DF Direct all those years ago. And I was like, hey, this lines up actually with the same areas where the shader compilation stutter occurs on the 3090 that I tested on back then. And then I loaded up, and this is, by the way, this is completely unplayable. I think this is awful. You cannot play these games with DirectX ray tracing on, at least in this instance. Then I loaded up Sackboy. And Sackboy, I played through the first mission again, and like every single time there would be a new effect on screen, like I pop a bubble and it shows something coming out of the bubble. Like right before I pop the bubble, the entire screen goes to 0 FPS for like 3-5 seconds, Whoa. Whatever, and then it goes again. And it would happen like every single time a new type of effect would occur on screen. If I popped a different bubble after the fact, after the first freeze, it wouldn't do it again. So it was only occurring with new effects on screen, I found out in Sackboy. So I will say to that user out there and to all the users who have seen this, I am replicating it. I couldn't replicate it in Returnal just because I think the area of the game I was in actually had good shader pre-compilation for the area I was in, the first biome. But I presume as I get deeper into the game, I presume it would start showing up again because the shader pre-compilation step in that game is only like a minute long. And it probably doesn't cover every single biome in every single area. But if I were to take a shot in the dark as to what is occurring, we are seeing shader compilation occurring just in time on the RX 9070 XT. But unlike on other GPUs out there, for some reason, or other drivers, even the RDNA 3 drivers, for some reason it's taking an extreme amount of time. And that's bringing the game down to 0 FPS. Now, I have no idea as to why. Maybe it's garbled. Maybe it's broken. Maybe it's happening for some reason for an extreme length. Maybe the shader that is being compiled actually does take longer on RDNA 4 because it's a longer compile time for a longer shader or something like that. It's really hard to know why, but I think it is actually related to shader compilation. Based upon the way it's happening and the areas it's happening in. But we should probably send off an email to AMD. I probably will after this to say, hey, I've replicated this user issue. Could you explain it and or could you take a look at it? And that's probably what I'll do so that they can look at it, fix it. Because like with NVIDIA, I've sent off a bunch of driver bugs to them before. I'll send one off to AMD. But yeah, this is definitely replicated, and it is not science. It's not BS that you're.
Were you going to say science fiction, Alex?
I was going to say it's not science fiction. It's real. Yeah.
I'm just trying to imagine what particular sort of brand of science fiction that would be.
Dystopian horror.
Star Trek: Strange New Worlds new season started this week, and basically whenever there's a scene cut or someone fires a phaser, everyone sort of stutters.
Stops.
For 10 seconds.
Like I said, that's going to be our April Fool's video one day. Is I'm going to re-edit Star Wars or something with shader compilation stutter, just so everyone can enjoy it.
It'd be quite fun. It should be. It is basically does sound like something that the vendor should be fixing in drivers, basically. But it is an oddly specific. I'm kind of reminded when Software Lumen didn't work on any AMD iGPU.
Right.
Yeah. Right. I forgot about that.
I think that was fixed. But yeah, that was a bit egregious in games. Several games. But
I've had
weirdly.
Software Lumen break on NVIDIA, and someone had software also break on the 7900 XTX back in the day, so with different driver versions. So you can have a different driver or different architecture, and it can break something for some reason, and it's a driver thing.
I think the bottom line, though, is that it has been replicated. It's not BS. Those examples that we're showing are perfectly valid, and hopefully we can get something done about it.